People are always asking me, how can I improve my game? And of course I tell them if I could see them on a court, see them in action, in other words, I could probably give them a lot of good advice. But without having the opportunity to do that with people, I have to say to them, I think you have to really evaluate your abilities. Be honest with yourself. Because if you'll admit that you don't have a particularly good shot in a certain area, and you want to go out and play a little better, you're going to be forced, if you're intelligent at all, to go out and practice the things that you can't do. What you want to do is pick out on a daily basis, or whenever you can get out to practice, something that you know that you're not doing too well. You know what it is. You're not happy with your approach shot? Don't practice your serve and volley. Practice the approach shot. Believe me, a greatest defensive specialist I've ever seen, Bjorn Borg, how do you think he practices? He practices short balls. He's always trying to improve the game that allow him to attack his opponent because he doesn't feel too comfortable doing that. So practice your weaknesses and not your strength. You know, unhappily for yourself or anybody, you're going to learn a lot by losing. I know I did. And the idea is when you get beat by somebody, while you have something that you've got to go out and straighten out in your game. If somebody is outsteadying you, you're going to know that next time you play that opponent, you're not going to beat him by the steady game, so you're going to have to do something different. Bring him in, go to the net. But what it really does is make you evaluate another segment of yourself in your game when you lose. So if you seek out competition, and you're going to lose some, and you learn from losing, and you keep going back to self-evaluate yourself very honestly and do something about it, you're going to find out you're going to have a lot of silver on that mantelpiece. There's another way that I think you can improve your game, and that's by taking advantage of the new practice and teaching aids. We all know what the backboard can do for you, and that's a good workout and good practice. And of course they have these nice ball throwing machines that can really hit the ball consistently to your weakness, allow you to practice the shots you can't make. And finally, I think one of the best things you ought to do is take a look at yourself at action on a videotape. It can give you some stop action, and you'd be surprised. You think you're hitting the ball one way, you're really hitting it another. And here to tell you more about the values of this new videotape technology is a real expert.
Hi, I'm Dan Harris of Sony Corporation. New electronic products are affecting every aspect of our lives. New technology is even being used in tennis. Here we have the Sony Motion Analyzer system, which you can use to improve your tennis game. We have a simple black and white camera here. We have a recorder with a built-in monitor here so you can see results immediately. And we have a simple controller. Now I'd like to ask Charlie Pasarell to hit a serve, and then we'll look at it.
Well, now I know what I'm doing wrong on my serve.
Looks good to me, Charlie. Maybe you can give me some pointers.
You'd be surprised how just one single tip can turn your game around. And I'm really hoping that some of the tips that we've put together with our great staff of professionals will do just that for you. So let's start off with some tips on the serve.
Some tips you might try on the serve. One in particular impresses me most, and that is take your ego out of delivering the first serve. Just get it in, and to get it in, you have to ease up on the speed.
Well, the one tip I might give someone on the serve if they're having problems with it is that they would lift their arm like they're going to use a hatchet and snap their elbow out of a flexed position to a fully extended position.
On the serve, I think the most important thing is the toss. The toss should be not straight at 12 o'clock, but really slightly to the right at 1 o'clock. And if you're left-handed, it should be slightly to the left at 11 o'clock so that you come slightly around the ball, and therefore your racket will follow through across your body.
On the serve, I like to go out under a tree, at least this is the way I learned, and I pick out a leaf that I can barely reach by sticking my racket up in the air, and I try to serve, just touching that leaf. And if I can continue to do that, I learn where my racket head goes through, and I know the length of the racket that way. Then I try to think about placing the ball in the air to that spot for my ball toss.
Our next series of tips covers the forehand.
Here's a tip for the forehand. There's no need to keep the racket as tight in your hand from the end of the backswing through the end of the follow-through. The essential part where your racket must be held very tightly is in the hitting zone.
One good one is to try to think of bailing motion and keeping the shoulders turned and from low to high. And every time I think of that, for some reason, I hit the ball a little bit better.
On the forehand stroke, The one thing that I would try and tell someone is do not make their swing too big. Try and make it very simple, taking the racket straight back and bringing it straight forward.
And now, let's get some great advice on the backhand.
On the backhand, there's two things I think are very important. One, especially for women players, they lead with their elbow, and the elbow comes through first. But if you can tuck the elbow into the body and let your racket come through first, it'll eliminate a lot of these elbow problems. And also, to try to make sure you take the racket back with both hands. Let your other hand help you take the racket back, and then you hit a one-handed shot as you start the forward swing. Let go.
Okay, on the backhand, the major tip that I would tell someone is that their shoulder would be to the net, and they would try and hit the ball out in front of them off the front foot.
And here's some advice on the point winner, the volley.
The thing about the volley is to tell someone that it's a simple stroke. If I toss a ball to you and you catch it, that's a volley. You catching the ball is using the pace of my toss.
And try to think of yourself as a fighter, therefore everything is out in front of the body, using nothing but jabs.
Now here are some tips on one of my favorite shots, the overhead.
On the overhead, I think the most important thing is preparation. Get your body weight back so that you can move forward to hit the shot.
I think a good tip is, one, is to, when in doubt, to let the ball bounce and get behind it and then move forward. But if you're going to play the ball in the air, to make sure you don't let the ball drop too low. You want to try to hit the ball as pointed as high as you can reach, but still slightly in front of your body. You don't want to try to hit the ball behind the head because you lose the wrist snap ability.
Now here's some advice on a shot that most people don't use enough, the lob.
A tip that I might give you on the lob is to play it just like a ground stroke, but to give it a little more height. Don't be afraid to have a full swing on the lob.
The best tip I've ever heard is from Gonzalez, where he said that you want to develop the kind of stroke that is so fluid and so smooth that it'll never, ever crack under pressure.
And finally, there's lessons. Unless you're unusual, you're going to have to get some help sometime with your game. Might be with your dad if you're a youngster. It might be with an older brother. You might go down at the park and find somebody that plays quite well that you can copy and maybe get some advice, because usually tennis players like to help youngsters or anybody try to improve their game. You can go to camps if you're a youngster. You can go to these wonderful tennis ranches if you can afford them. But you ought to get out there sometime when you're in trouble with your game and take a lesson. We certainly hope that this lesson on improving your game, along with the great tips given to you by our staff of professionals, will do just that, improve your game. Well, that's it for Volume 2, and we certainly hope that you've enjoyed this edition of Complete Tennis from the Pros.